I believe the Dallas Cowboys will go 6-11 this year. And I know that Cowboys fans are probably very, very angry hearing that. Now, I would remind people it's not my job to make people happy. It's my job to say what I believe. But before I get into what their problem is, I'm going to introduce the team. But I want to say that I think the Cowboys are a team that has a couple really good players. A star player there, some talent, sure, spattered throughout their team. But having a couple good players does not necessarily mean you have a good football team. And I look at other teams around the league and I go, man, Dallas has a lot of holes on their roster that other teams in the league that are competing for a Super Bowl simply do not have. Now, I want to talk about what's new to this team. Obviously, Dak Prescott is not new to the team, but he is coming back from an injury. That's a big deal. He got a massive contract. I'm happy for him. But the more interesting thing to me that's new to this football team from last year is they hired a new defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn. Now, Dan Quinn is a former head coach in Atlanta, and the hope is that he can come in and fix the Cowboys' defense. They were a mess last year, and I think it's very possible Dan Quinn does well. Remember, Dan Quinn won a Super Bowl in Seattle as a defensive coordinator. He also went to another Super Bowl with Atlanta. Now, that did not go very well. We don't need to spit on his grave here. And even though the guy failed as a head coach, I wouldn't be quick to assume he will fail as a defensive coordinator because, head coach and defensive coordinator are not the same role. He's done well as a defensive coordinator in the past. There's nothing that says he couldn't do well as a defensive coordinator again in the NFL. And here's the problem. I don't think that you can have good scheme and good play design, but I think the talent on the back end and their secondary is going to be a problem down the road. We'll dive into that more. But I have an open mind about Dan Quinn. I don't think he's necessarily just going to fail because of the fact that he wasn't a great coach in Atlanta down the stretch. Now, another addition to this team, aside from Dan Quinn, is first-round pick, rookie linebacker Micah Parsons. He'll be really fun to watch. You're pairing him alongside stud linebacker Leighton Vander Esch. There's another starting rookie on this defense for the Cowboys, defensive tackle Osaru Odigizua from UCLA, a guy I went to high school with back in Portland, Oregon. I'm just rooting for him big time. I'm so excited to see him on the starting roster. I was looking at their team and I'm like, dude, Osa is starting? Oh my gosh, that's really cool. Shout out to him. The defense also added DeMonte Casey in free agency. He's a safety that played for Dan Quinn last year in Atlanta. They have receivers Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup. Great running back Ezekiel Elliott. A really star defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence. So Dallas is interesting to watch. I mentioned, Amari Cooper, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, DeMarcus Lawrence, CeeDee Lamb, like star players, sure. But again, that does not necessarily mean you have a good football team. And there are some really big holes and problems with this roster. And the two major problems are, number one, I think problem number one is their secondary. We'll get to problem number two in a moment. I am hopeful that second-year corner Trayvon Diggs will develop and become a good starting corner in the NFL for the Cowboys. And he has a lot of potential. But after him, man, the Cowboys' pass defense is a big question mark. Their number two corner is just I have no confidence in him. They brought in a new safety, DeMonte Casey from Atlanta, but that's not really, it's not like he was a star last year in Atlanta. I have major questions about their pass defense, and I think that, frankly, opposing teams are going to have a field day. They play, week 9, they play Denver, who's got a multitude of great receivers. Week 17, they play Arizona. You're telling me they're going to go up against Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green and do well? No, Dallas is going to really, really struggle against teams that have good receiving cores. So I just really, really worry about Dallas's ability to stop other teams' passing attacks. Now, here's problem number two. The secondary is a big deal, but the offensive line is also a really big concern in Dallas. This is an offensive line, almost a defensive line, an offensive line that has been really good in the past. You have 3 former Pro Bowlers. You have left tackle Tyron Smith, right tackle La'el Collins, right guard Zach Martin. So these are guys who've been really, really good in the past. And on paper, they're great. If this was Madden, I'd say, hey, yeah, this is a really good offensive line. But the reality is that last year, these guys missed a combined 36 games. And, these guys are aging. The quality of their play is declining. And frankly, they can't stay healthy. So I just do not have a lot of confidence in this offensive line. And it feels like a problem that should have been addressed a long time ago that is getting ignored over and over again. Every year I'm like, the Cowboys still are not going to deal with their offensive line. It gets a little bit older. and a little bit weaker every single year. Not to mention, you look at the Cowboys' schedule, and they play a number of really, really tough road games. They play at Tampa, at the Chargers, at New England, at Minnesota, at Kansas City. I'm like, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a loss, that's a tough game. Now, Week 10 will be fun. Week 10 is Dan Quinn against his former team, the Atlanta Falcons. I just think that'll be really fun to watch. But here's the reality of the Cowboys. Their offensive line is washed up, and having a new defensive coordinator is great, but if you have no talent in your secondary, it's not going to matter. And so it makes me laugh and feel a little bit confused when Jerry Jones, the Cowboys owner, talks about winning a Super Bowl. I'm like, well, you talk about Super Bowls, but you ignore these massive problems with your roster. I look at other teams around the league. I'm like, the Browns are stacked. The Buccaneers are loaded. The Bills have no holes on their team. And the Cowboys have glaring problems. So it's weird to me to talk about a Super Bowl when the Cowboys have these massive issues that feel like they're being ignored. And that is why I believe the Dallas Cowboys will go 6-11 this year.